Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, good afternoon. I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. If y'all were good, Miss Molly gave you a box of candy. If not, you can leave now. No, I'm kidding. Thank you everyone for being here. We have 3 items on the agenda. All to be heard for the first time today at the appropriate time. I'll speak to one of them in particular. But we have House Bill 184. This is new to our committee. It was moved over from Education. House Bill 12. I'm sorry, let me back up and actually read what's on the paper here. We have House Bill 148. We have House Bill 1224 and House Bill 1124. Somebody's playing a wicked game on me with all the 24s going at the same time. So we have those 3 items on the agenda today. And of course, I'll ask if there's anything for good of the order at the end. If there's no objection, we'll continue with the agenda as that. And moving on into that agenda, I want to ask Representative Carolyn Hughley from the 141st if she'd like to come up and tell us about her proposition, HB 148. And while she comes up, I'm going to thank her for getting up here today. It just was moved over into the committee yesterday. The representative and I had a discussion on this earlier in the year. I guess we thought it might come to this committee, and then it went to education. And then the education chair wanted us to hear it as well. So she just had a sub put together. We are going to, what I'd like it for us to do today is listen to her proposition without paying I guess granular attention to the bill. There may be some things that the representative needs to continue to do for the bill, but given the time we are in the session and the needs that you'll hear in the bill, I think you'll agree that it makes sense for her to be able to spread that knowledge over us today. So with that, Representative, you have the floor. Let me see if I can get your mic on. Are you good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And thank you for the opportunity to come and discuss House Bill 148. House Bill 148, as you said, was in the Education Committee. It's been turned over to this committee, and I really appreciate your taking the opportunity to look at it. It's a simple bill that would allow us to provide a stipend for students as they complete their student teaching programs. I heard from several students over the last year, and the students were telling me, I'm doing my student teaching, and I go to school in the morning, and then I have a class after school, then I go to work, and I get off work 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I get up and start it all over again the next day. So most of the times when you are doing an internship of some sort, you're compensated for that because that's part of your learning. With student teaching, they're paying for the class and they're spending their time learning their craft, which is very important. And it's important for us to realize that we have to make sure we do everything we can to encourage the pipeline of new teachers coming on, because Georgia, like many other states, face a teaching shortage. And so it's a workforce issue as far as I'm concerned. Any other workforce issue when there's a shortage, we try and do something to encourage people to go into that field. So according to the PSC, Georgia needs 12,000 new hires each year, but our schools of education are only producing 4,400 students. And the other 7,600 have to come from other sources. And of course, they come from other states. They come from parapros going into teaching and people moving from one type of career to another. So it's important for us to look at what we can do to remove financial barriers to our young people becoming teachers and joining our workforce. And several other states recognize this as a problem, and they are offering stipends to their students to help them through this student teacher process. States like Colorado, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Maryland, and there are several others. In addition to helping students through the student teacher process, they also offer stipends for them as they go through the testing that they have to have for certification. So the Page did a survey recently, and their survey of their members showed that for those who graduated from 2005 onward, most of them, according to them, 78% of their members have student loan debt, and that student loan debt, while earning a bachelor's degree, was up to about $40,000. And for those students who were African Americans, 50% had the 40,000 or more. If you were non-African American, it was 23%, for a total of 78% of their teachers said that they had student loan debt. So I don't know if you all remember, I've never been a teacher myself, but my mother and all my sisters are. And so a teacher gets their contract in the spring. They start teaching July. They get paid 1st of August. And that is after they have gone a whole semester, doing the student teaching. And so we had a situation in Columbus where a young lady had graduated, but she was having problems coming to Columbus. She had gotten a job, but she had no resources to get the apartment, to get the car, to start this job. But she had the promise of this job. And so in her particular case, her principal went and signed the lease for her so that she could come and go to work. And so those are the things that many of our students face. And that's why it's so important for us to try and fill in this gap. Also, I want to remind us that initially, when Hope was established, we had scholarships for teachers. But in 2011, when we had to roll back on some of the things we were doing at Hope, those scholarships were eliminated. And we have never gone back to help our teachers. And we might not remember that, but the teachers remember that. And our friends at Page and our friends at GAE remember that, and they have reminded me of that. And so basically, what we're talking about is just creating a stipend for the young people as they go through their student teacher experience, keeping in mind that these students work full-time and they incur the cost of daily living, such as rent and utilities and transportation. They have to have professional attire to go to school every day. They have to have food costs because they're not on their campus and using their meal plan or whatever. So we got to think about this if we are serious about valuing our teachers, and if we're serious about making sure that our young people choose teaching as the honorable profession that it is and go forward. So how does House Bill 148 address this issue? Now, we've talked about several options of what we might do in this latest version, which is very, very hot off the press. And I want to thank Michael Walker for putting up with me being such a pest. But the bill that we have before us today basically adds a scholarship component to Hope. And the students will receive $7,500 per semester. And it's based on their college of education. Some of the colleges, 1 semester, other colleges or some are talking about 2 semesters for student teaching. And the award will be issued in monthly installments. And if the student fails to complete the teaching experience, they would be required to pay those funds back. And essentially, that's the basic concept. And I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and entertain any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Representative. I want to just pause a second and let everyone know that we do have 4 members on with us from Zoom. For those that thought I started the meeting without a quorum, we had 4 members on Zoom. I think we may have a quorum in the room now. So yeah, I do want to give the members time to take questions or ask questions, realizing that I'm not sure we have in front of you. Do we have the latest? Your latest LC, is it 1799S?
Yes.
Okay, that is the latest LC from the member. So that we do have a couple of questions as we move forward on this. First, Representative Burnout, she's over to your left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Hughley, for bringing this bill. When you were as a retired educator, one of the things you talked about was that you missed one step, that once you start your student teaching, the first part of it, you're just observing. But then what happens is you become that teacher. So which means that when they leave school, they have work to do because they have now assumed the role of the teacher. So it's very difficult for them to be able to go to work and work a job till midnight, because that means that if they come home, that means they have to correct papers, enter grades, or if they have IEPs or whatever it is that teacher would do, that is their responsibility. So this stipend would really help them, because at that time, once they switch over and they become the classroom teacher, they don't really have a lot of time to work in the afternoon and still be able to keep up with everything they're supposed to do for their class. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your passion on this. So I've got a couple of questions, as I normally do. And Mr. Walker, I promise you will say that you are way less pesty to him than I have been in the past in my legislation with him. So I'm concerned about perhaps misplaced priorities. If we're trying to encourage more teachers, if this scholarship is going to them while they're student teaching, they're in the 4th quarter at the 2-minute warning. They've already committed to, they're committed to the profession. I can't believe that they'll stop and become an electrical engineer at that point and go into something else. So you already have potential teachers that are lacking just student teaching in order to become teachers. And I'm not sure that in our zest to get more teachers, I'm not sure this does that. It certainly would help teachers that are wanting to, but then I have to look at my nurses who do a lot of practicums, and they're working at nursing homes and at hospitals, and they're learning their craft alongside a proctor, and they are in the beginning steps of being a nurse and beginning steps here of being a teacher. And we don't provide that same stipend to our nurses. And I know we have a nursing shortage, but once you've got to that point, you're kind of committed. So once you're doing what's it called? The practicum for nurses, this is the next generation of nurses. We already know where they're going to be, and we're not providing the same for them or for the architect that is, has to spend a semester in an internship. I just don't see that we might have misplaced priorities on this. I understand your heart and wanting to help the profession, but if our goal is to increase teachers, I don't think this does it.
Well, I appreciate that, but let me point out 2 things. Your nurse and your engineer is going to make a lot more money over the course of their working career than a teacher is going to do. And also, in some cases, students will get to this point and cannot afford to do the student teaching, and we do lose them. So it's not as if there is no one that will be lost doing that proposition. But you got to think about the fact that when you become a nurse and you go to work for a hospital or whatever, you're going to get paid right away. You're not going to be waiting for the once a month pay and all of that. And you're going to make a lot more money. My granddaughter is a nurse. That's why she's not a teacher. She's a nurse because she's going to make a lot more money. And an engineer would definitely make a lot more money, particularly over the long term. So I understand what you're saying. And I understand that in my mind, we're talking apples and oranges.
Let me interject here and talk with the representative, and I hear what Chairman Perkle saying. And I think there's a couple of things that she mentioned, the scholarship that was in place at sometime. That's not what we're talking about here. This would almost, and I mentioned late in the game to the representative, this might be something that we would consider adding to the completion grant. Less than $2,500 could be enough if it was an allowable expense to because if not, but for this, I mean that, and I'm not suggesting that's what you do, but if that's a barrier to completion, it's just the conversation we have. But I hear you, Chairman Perkle, there are a lot of needs out there. We're going to hear about that next week, about the competing needs we have for education and dollars. Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always hate to follow Chairman Perkle and you in any discussions, but thank you, Representative, for your passion for education. Always want to try to do what we can to promote teachers. They got a hard job and very dedicated to do that. But is it not true that Georgia teachers are the highest paid teachers in the Southeast that I hear? As a comment. So I think we're doing a lot better with our teachers. Walk me through. It's been a long time since I had a lot of friends graduating in the teaching profession when I was at UGA over at, I think, Idaho Hall.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And but is it the final semester that they student teach? Is it just one semester? And do they take any other classes, or is it final semester dedicated solely to student teaching?
It's going to depend on their program. But for the most part, it's my understanding it's their final semester. That's the final thing that they have to do before they sit for the exam and get their licensure. So they are way down the road when they get to the student teaching part. And I'm just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that
I wonder if part of their degree allows them to do student teaching before they completed all their other classes. I would doubt that.
no.
Chairman, we can get folks from the university system to talk to us about it, but I think it is really the last thing that you do.
That's what my
Yes, sir.
assumption. That's what it used to be anyway. So I was just trying to get in my head their needs or what they're facing. So you're thinking some of them also have another part-time job. They're going to do a teaching job and maybe a job in the community after they get off work at 4:00 at the school.
That is what students have reported to me that they're actually doing. Now, most of the schools of education encourage them not to because of what Representative Arnaud has indicated to you, because they have, just like a teacher, they have duties that's going to take them beyond the classroom, because they have to do, I'm assuming, lesson plans and get ready
Can I
for the next day.
Can I further quickly?
Mhm.
But I guess in my mind, I'm thinking we've got other students and other degrees that are trying to complete their degree and then in school, but also have another part-time job too, trying to do it. So I hate to start carving out.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing, I can speak to this if the lady would allow. And we made it fine. This was a decade ago, but my son was at the University of Georgia. He taught student teaching up in Jackson County.
Mhm.
He left the university.
leave.
He left the university proper at probably 6 a.m. to get up there and work and stayed up there after school with the kids probably till 3 or 4, I'm guessing. So I think that the difference here may be that if you're on the meal plan, for instance, you're getting your meals there, and now you're off campus and you've paid
Okay.
for your meal plan, but you can't eat there anymore. You may have had your job, but you can't work there anymore. I mean, you kind of, it's a little bit different in this case. I certainly understand the competition, but that's why I wanted to float this out for everybody to kind of think over for a week before we get down into it. Thank you very much. We have a couple more questions. Representative Edna Jackson. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, when I saw this, I think it's wonderful that we would look out for those that are going into education. We talk about education and lack of teachers here in the state of Georgia now. And if we don't do something about it, you aren't going to have anyone out there in the field teaching our young people. I was never a teacher because I wasn't the disciplined one. But my sister was a teacher, and I know what she had to go through. She had to have a part-time job, which my grandmother told her, no, you have to study because you're also trying to take your classes, you're teaching your teacher that you're under has to check your work to make sure that you're going in the right direction. And you're also new to the experience, so it's more difficult. I think if we are talking about, a 1 semester kind of program where it's the last thing, it encourages that student to continue to what they're doing. I don't know, I have not read the entire thing, but I do feel it's something to worth looking into. And only because on yesterday, I was at the education committee, the appropriations committee. And when they told me the kind of salaries that some of our teachers are starting out with, a little better than 25 maybe, but then that the substitute teacher or what have you, $20,000. Well, I always have that thing that people need to pay for what they get, and our teachers should be paid because they're the ones that are out there teaching the engineers, the nurses, and other disciplines that they go into. So I hope that we will look at this so that we can see where our teachers are, and maybe this is a good program that could help. Some of them are starting at the elementary school level or in the high school level as well. But I do think this is something that we should look into. We have given more monies for nurses and other kinds of programs. This can be a change breaker for people that maybe want to go into education, but they know they don't have the funds and everything to do in it. So I commend you for bringing this to us, and hopefully we will thoroughly look at it, and hopefully we'll be able to help them with a stipend. It will keep them in because they will drop out in the middle of the hand if they cannot survive financially.
Thank you, Representative Jackson. We have about 5 more questions. I'm going to ask you, Ray. We have 2 more items we got to get to this afternoon, and this is our first look at this, and you just got the bill today. So I'm going to ask everybody if we could be a little more brief and just question. I'm not. I love my member. I love my Savannah, former mayor member. But just let's get to questions on this, and we'll have it back, and we can debate the concept of the letter on Zoom if we can figure out how to do this. Representative Clark, Dr. Clark.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you,
on.
Mr. Chairman. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Representative Hughley, for bringing this bill. I just want to clarify something that you said earlier. So when a person is going through a teaching program, do they have to do their student teaching in the state of Georgia, or can they go to another state to do their student teaching?
I don't know the answer
I
to
don't
that.
answer
It
that.
would be based on the requirements of the school.
Okay.
We'll
And
have
then
to
the
look into
second
that,
question
Dr.
I
Clark.
have as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, it's very quick. If these neighboring states are offering stipends, is it possible that some of these people going through these teaching programs might leave our state to go to a state that does offer a stipend? And then maybe we actually lose that teacher because they don't return back to Georgia after they complete their student teaching. Is that a possibility?
I don't think so.
We don't have, those are good questions, Dr. Clark, and we'll find out. We don't have the information. I understand that there are some counties in Georgia that are actually paying student teacher stipends.
Yes.
And have actually spoken. I don't see anybody from the Department of Education here. I spoke to them earlier today. We may get them to come back and opine on that a bit later, but thank you very much, Dr. Clark. Representative Moore, where are you? There you are. You are number 29 down there?
I am.
Yes.
Good morning, Representative. Oh, good afternoon. Happy V-Day. So I wanted to ask a question, get some clarity here. At the end of the program, this is more closest to the practicum. Without this phase, they would go no further. Is that correct?
Well, the end of the program is the student teaching.
Well, we
And
don't know.
after-
There could be another step beyond that they could skip this portion, but they won't be able to go forward unless they finish
Uh,
this portion.
Representative, I think Representative Hughley is right. I think in most of our teaching curriculum, this is the last step. This is the last thing you do. This is what you do before you walk. And I by that, I mean graduate. So this is the last thing to do. So it is the kind of the last mile to go.
Well,
through that.
I'm asking this question because ironically, this morning, a student teacher contacted my office because she needs resources to pay her rent. If she stops now, she won't be able to graduate this year, and that would be a sad thing. And I just wanted to make sure, get the clarity that this is the last stop before she goes on to graduation and then take a practicum and go into the field that she's or he has educated himself for. That is the last step. So giving them this last rocket boost into their profession is what we're talking about here. All right, thank you.
Thank you. On Zoom, Chairman Carpenter, Casey Carpenter.
Thank you, guys. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Happy Valentine's Day. I just food for thought. I know we've talked a lot about internships in general have changed over the years, right? When I was coming out, internships, you didn't get paid anything because it was about, getting your foot in the door at places. And now people are getting paid. And I think the conversation can be had that it happens in this industry as well. Maybe possibly it's something that we can do some funding in conjunction with the schools that are doing the student allowing them to operate, because they are getting some value from that labor. So if the school systems, and they can see it as a recruitment tool as well, if we could figure out a way to lump money together, so they've got skin in the game too, I think to me that's a better solution.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Chairman Mayfiak, number 24.
Yes, thank you, sir. On line 82, it says the Hope Student Teacher Grant shall be dispersed to participating students by their participating institution in 5 installments of $1,500 each. So is that, we're talking more than a semester, correct? When do they student teach? Is it more than a semester?
The programs are 1 semester, but there are some schools that are requiring 2 semesters.
Okay, this is saying 5 installments. Wait a minute, participating institution in 5 installments of $1,500 each
That's
over
just-
the course of a semester.
Right. So that's 5 months. So the semester would, they start in July, August, September,
Okay.
October, November, December.
So it's $1,500 a month. Gotcha.
Well, again, the lady is bringing us a proposition
Got
for
it.
discussion. So
Thank you.
she's
Thank you.
on Zoom, Representative Glaze.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much, Chairman. And thank you so much, Representative Hughley, for bringing this bill. I just have one question. Do you have any data that maybe Page or GAE has provided where there are students who were not able to finish their teaching degree because they could not afford to do the full-time semester to complete it because they just didn't have the funding and they needed to work? Is there any data that helps us see that even clearly? I know I've heard of it, but I wanted to just see if there was data from GAE or Page.
Well, GAE is here, and I've heard from Page, and the GAE brought their student leaders, I believe is what they call them. And they have looked at this, and they have some information, and I'll be happy to get that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill, Representative Hughley. I have some financial questions. So I just, because I know so many school systems already provide a stipend to the hosting teacher when they have a student teacher, because there is an expectation that the teacher that takes on the student will now have additional work to do. So I appreciate that this spreads the responsibility for the student stipend perhaps to the state when the school districts are already taking on, or the schools themselves taking on the cost of the host teacher's stipend. If I understand correctly, because this is housed under HOPE, this isn't something we necessarily have to build into the state budget. It would need to be built into the lottery's budget. So the funding, conceivably knowing how big the lottery reserves are, should already be available for this, correct?
That's my thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Keep that thought. I understand that there may be well, I'll go with that. We must remember we increased the funding for HOPE from 90% to 100% last year. So let's I'm always careful to put a straw into revenue that we don't have to budget. If this is important, I mean, I guess I would just say this, and I'm offering a comment and I ask everybody else to offer questions. If this is worth doing, it ought to be worth us finding the money in a budget to do it, not just going, there's money over there, right? So, and it may well be that. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's always easy to spend somebody else's money, but a bit harder when we have to find the money ourselves. All right, well, go back to the last question. I'll go back. Representative Bernal, did you have anything further you want to ask?
Yes, I did. I wanted to speak to what Chairman Perkle was saying. Would you rather have a teacher who has been trained in college, that has gone through the education program, or as most school districts have had to do, is hire people who say, like, for example, my degree was in journalism, and I went back to school to be a teacher. Okay, so that meant I learned as I was teaching, and then, but I don't have to, but now you still have to take courses and you still have to take tests as you're going along. So even though they're getting paid, but they weren't educators in the beginning. Okay. Because I didn't want to be a teacher. My mother said that I would teach because at that time I started substituting, and then I fell in love with teaching. But some people come into teaching in different ways. So this program, they would at least be trained within a college, as opposed to someone who has worked another job and then they're coming in. Teaching is a very difficult job, and it's a job that you have to love. It's not a job that you just come in and just say, I'm going to do it. And so I think that anything that we can do to encourage individuals to become educators is very important for our state. It's not just enough that, yes, we are giving teachers raises, but teachers are still walking off those jobs because they also don't like the conditions of some of the places where they work at.
Thank you, Representative. All right, we're going to move on now. Do you want to wind up anything, Representative? We're going to ask. I'm going to ask if there's. Actually, I don't know. Do we have anybody here to speak? We don't actually have anybody signed up. So, but we will get back with you and talk through this tomorrow on the floor, and then we'll see where we can go and find the funding sources. But you're welcome to close. Yes, ma'am.
Let me close just by thanking you for considering this, because it's important to our students. It's important to our future workforce. And it's important that, you know, we think about the best way to handle these type situations, because we need teachers way out in the future. We're gonna fully fund pre-K. We got to have more teachers, and we got to show teachers that we want them in the field. And I think this is a way to help encourage them. So with that, let me thank all of you for your time. Happy Valentine's Day to all, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We're going to move on now. I'm going to, if it's all right with Chairman Fleming, I'm going to go ahead and do 1124 on completion grants, and I'll turn the chair over to our Vice Chairman, Chairman Scoggins, and I guess I'll tilt a little bit on the committee here and our ask Chairman Scoggins if it be the will of the committee. I normally we like to hear things twice. This is going to be a completion grant. If be interested if the committee, you know, wishes to do something with it today, that would be up to Chairman Scoggins at the time. So I'm going to step away and call on him to drive from here.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Martin. This is House Bill 1124, LC 491736. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Okay, Mr. Chairman, you can present your bill.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a redo of the completion grant that I mentioned earlier in the year. There's no change on the front page. The back page lines 17 through 20 is the exact wording that we talked about last year, moving the threshold from 80% down to 70% for a 4-year program, and down to 45%. Well, actually creating a 45% threshold for a 2-year program. It also, on line 25, extends the repeal date on this to 2027 to give Georgia Student Finance time, two full years to have the lower threshold so they can measure it. I would remind the committee, and if the chair, if there's questions on it, if the chair will allow, President Riley with Student Finance is here. But if you remember earlier in the year, we had a presentation where a very high percentage, I believe, President Riley, 58% of the people that avail themselves of the completion grant completed their degree or credential. 42% had not yet. That does not mean they will not. Subsequent data said that of the course hours taken using the completion grant, just shy of 95%, I think it was 94.8% across all private USG and TCSG facilities. 94.8% of the hours were passed. So I think the money's being well spent and well used in the program, and this would extend it for 2 years, lower the thresholds, make it more usable by folks that are in a 2-year program. I will note that in consultation with the Governor's Office of Budget and the Governor's Office, we remove the uplift. Everybody's using the uplift in words with the additional $1,000 in order to see what the base program looked like. I think it's more important to keep the program going than that $1,000 extra. Again, we'll remind the committee the average award was $1,200. So when we look at this, and President Riley can correct me, but I think somewhere around 6,200 students avail themselves of it. I think there were 6,500 awards. And so when you think about it, for an average cost of $1,200, legislation that this committee in this House, this Senate, and the governor signed impacted 3,600 people to help them finish their degree or credential. That's a pretty good value for $1,200. So that's the bill. Extends it 2 years. It moves the thresholds. The money's in the 2025 budget, and I'd stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great bill. Is there any questions from the committee? Tim? Okay. Chairman Fleming? Yes. There's something to speak on it? Okay, I didn't know. We'll get your question. Ashley Young, come on up to the podium.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ashley Young, and I am an education policy analyst with Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. Thank you to the committee and to Chairman Martin. I just want to briefly say that we are in support of House Bill 1124. We had an opportunity just this past fall to engage in some research on college completion grants ourselves and found that many of the financial aid officers that we spoke to, overwhelming response from them was that they would love to see the eligibility lowered. So this bill is certainly headed in the right direction, and we are very much in support of that. Just one last note I want to leave with you all as we're continuing to advocate for students and to help them cross that finish line. Georgia is third in the nation for student loan debt per borrower. And so we want to thank you all for continuing to keep this a priority of helping students finish college. Last thing I'll say, racially and financially marginalized students are disproportionately affected by this challenge. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And again, we are in support of House Bill 1124.
Thank you so much. That's all the speakers. Okay. Now, any questions from the committee? And are ready for any other comments? Chairman Fleming.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Okay, I think the time's right.
I make the motion that HB 1224, no, sorry, that's my bill. 1120, HB 1124 do pass.
Why don't we get both of them?
That's right.
We had questions on Zoom, guys.
I'm sorry?
Questions on Zoom.
Okay. Who?
Was it Clark?
Who is it?
Clark.
Barnes?
Clark.
Oh, Barnes. Okay. Okay, on Zoom, Representative Barnes. Are
Thank
with
you,
us?
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just had a quick question. This is a great bill. I followed up after our last meeting and President Riley got right back to me. So I appreciate that. My question is, now that we have lowered the threshold, what if you applied prior to the threshold reduction and were denied? Are those students able to get precedence since the threshold was dropped, or how are we going to reach out to those who were denied and now qualify since the threshold will be dropped? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
There you go. Chairman Scoggins, I would like to, if it please you, to have President Riley address that directly.
President Riley, come on up.
Her rules and regs govern the awards on the completion grant.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Barnes, for the compliment. Always a pleasure to work with you. The students would have the opportunity to go back to their financial aid offices at their institutions and petition for reconsideration. This, of course, would change the threshold of completion, so they would not be prohibited from pursuing it at a lower threshold.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Riley. You might want to stay there one more. So. Okay, next is Representative Glaze.
Thank you so much, Chairman Martin, for bringing this great bill. And we've seen some of the first information on the number of grants that were earmarked and then initiated, and those students took advantage. Again, this question is more towards Dr. Riley. I wanted to know how we could do a better job at making sure that our USG, TCSG, and our private colleges are aware of the new threshold, so that we have more of the higher percentage of our colleges actually taking advantage of it. I know I called around to several HBCUs who did not take advantage of it to help them understand that they still had time. So is there a way that we could make sure that all of this information gets out to our colleges and with the new threshold?
Thank you very much for the question, Representative, and thank you for your advocacy. After the hearing on the outcomes of the first year completion grant, your efforts and others stimulated our partners to step right up. We are providing awards at a much greater rate this year than last year. And certainly upon the governor's signature of any changes to the program, we will immediately communicate not only the award amounts that they would have available for the upcoming fiscal year, but to advocate that they immediately consider students that might not have met that completion threshold in past years. So thank you again.
And thank you for your work. It is amazing. We appreciate you.
Pretty much it. No, thank you, President Riley. You're always a wealth of knowledge for this committee. I appreciate it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion due pass by Representative Fleming. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the committee? None? Okay, what's the pleasure? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Aye.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, Scoggins. I just, as we move on to the next bill, Representative Fleming, if you'll go down there for 1224. I knew that 24, I knew them both being the last two digits, 24 was going to get one of us, and it actually got us both, Representative Fleming. Yes, sir. And as we move forward, I do want to thank President Riley for working with us, and also the governor's policy staff and the governor himself took time and met with us to get this where we wanted to be, and I really appreciate Governor Kemp on the support on this. With that, we have HB 1224. Representative Fleming, tell us about your proposition dealing with the definitions of approved schools and some at the risk of putting my foot on the pedal, some good changes to uplift an award for careers, high demand careers.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to present HB 1224. And just for the committee's purposes, we're working off LC 491797S. This is as y'all know, during last year's off session during summer and fall, Chairman Martin had several ad hoc committees. One of them was the ad hoc committee on dual enrollment and tuition equalization grants, which I had the pleasure of serving. We had several meetings throughout the summer and fall, and I would say a large majority of our discussion focused on tuition equalization grants. As y'all know, the past few sessions, there's been several pieces and proposals of legislation pertaining to the TEG program and its future. So what this bill does is takes several of the recommendations from the committee of this summer, also with some cleanup language that Chairman Martin had enrolled into this committee sub. And in the interest of time, I'll just walk through the highlights, as many of y'all have already seen this bill. It's like many of y'all have signed on to this bill. But the first two pages just strikes all the code that's currently in the wording that's in code pertaining to the eligibility requirements for proprietary institutions and non-proprietary institutions. On page 4, where you'll see it starts at line 69, we talk about approved non-proprietary schools. None of that language is new. It's all from existing code that we put in here. Where we started making some changes is when we started talking about approved proprietary schools. You can see on line 83 where it has to be located in the state. And then another change we made is that the school has been in existence in this state for at least 5 years. And also on down, you'll see starting at line, I think 96, that the schools have to be accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission's own colleges. So they'd have to be accredited. And we added another new section, this is what we worked with Chairman Martin on as well, is a provisional status for a school. What that means is if a non-proprietary post-secondary educational institution that otherwise meets the definition of an approved non-proprietary school, except for the lack of accreditation by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commissioned on Colleges, they can get a provisional status. And it will have up to 5 years to attain their accreditation. And upon that 5 years, if they have not made any effort towards obtaining their accreditation, they could be removed. They will be removed from the program, or if they have showed goodwill and are in the process of getting their accreditation, the Student Finance Commission can grant them extension after that as well. So that is how some of the work we changed up on the eligibility requirements for proprietary institutions. On page 7 from our committee this summer, there's a lot of discussion. As y'all know, last year with tuition equalization grants, we were able to, the legislature did raise the award amount. And we had a lot of discussion this fall and summer about high demand career fields, which we had a bill earlier, I think this session by Representative Gamble that is addressing that. But also what this piece of legislation does, if a student is in one of these high demand career fields that is outlined by the Office of Workforce Development, they will get 150% of the tuition equalization grant. So currently that's, 2 semesters would be $1,500 a year. If they're in one of these high demand career fields, they'd be getting an additional $750 in tuition equalization grants for that year. And that would be every year as the workforce development updates that list, and it would be updated. If you look on past that, page 8, it is just cleaning up some cross references to approved schools and in the existing code already. So no major changes there. But Mr. Chairman, if that is the bill, that is what it does. I know a lot of us have had one also on this. I've talked to a lot of y'all about the bill. Y'all have read it. I appreciate the support that I've gotten from the committee. I appreciate all the members who participated this summer and this fall in the ad hoc committee. And I look forward to taking any questions and hopefully getting this bill through next week in committee meeting. But Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll be glad to take any questions. And Mr. Chairman, if you have any comments too, since some of this was your language, I would love to hear that as well.
You have a couple of questions. I'll go to them first and see what we have here. Is this number 18? This is Representative Chairman Dickey, is that you? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Fleming. Appreciate your work on this. I was on your study committee with this, and thank you, President Riley, being here. I want this to be positive, but I hope it doesn't come across negative. So it's a lot for me to try to figure out here, because we did away with 2 pages, but added more. So
Chairman Dickey, can I just interrupt you? And I'm gonna come right back to you. The idea of doing that was to take the kind of the word sandwich, I will say, or the word spaghetti that had evolved over the years in paragraphs A on page 2, 20, lines 22 through 41, and then on page 3, the paragraph B, from 42 to 58.
Yeah,
there's sort of a word spaghetti in there that had a lot of provided howevers, and as things had been added, and the goal was, and that's what we had circulated earlier, was to try to boil that down into bullet points.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that's what we
thank
tried
you.
to do. But if there's
you
additional
discussed
questions,
that.
yes, sir. But if there's additional questions,
so get to the point. What schools does this add or subtract? Just to be clear. Who are we adding and who we're deleting?
So, I think President Riley could help with this, but there were several institutions I think that addressed us during the summer. That I think in talking to Chairman Martin and President Riley, there's only a handful, 2 or 3, maybe 4 that it would add.
well, let me correct. As it exists today, it doesn't add.
That's right.
Or subtract anyone.
Okay.
And that's why we wanted to present it today. So this is not, things have changed. Now I'm looking down at Attorney Walker. That is what we believe we have done. We have kept it the way it is. So the change to TEG is what the gentleman presented relative to the 150%. I will ask Attorney Walker again, and I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Representative Fleming, does this also deal with the provisional status being trifurcated relative to dual enrollment, but it grandfather schools they're in there? Provisional status might not carry some of the things going forward, correct? When schools are added, we talked about that. That's not yet in this version.
Under this scheme, Mr. Chairman, a provisional school would effectively be an approved school. The operative language is going to, I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, is going to really shift now from is it an approved school or not an approved school, is it eligible for TEG funds? That's, I think, if that's answering your question, I may be misunderstanding your question.
It is for now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So please continue, Chairman Dickey, if you had.
Well, thank you. Well, that kind of comes to my next question about this provisionally approved. So it's fairly open-ended. I think looks to me like President Riley has authority to continue that on past 5 years or whatever. So what conditions would you approve or disapprove these type schools?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on the way the bill is written today, my understanding would be that the school would be expected to achieve the accreditation approval by SACS. Should they not within 5 years, the authority would have the ability to consider a hardship or something that would give them an extension, but certainly not indefinitely. The intent would be to have provisionally improved schools become fully approved schools or leave the program.
Okay. And thank you, Chairman Dickey. I hear you loud and clear. The provisional, the way the provisional language was in, and Chairman Fleming was good enough to roll that language from a bill we were working on. You have pointed out, that's why it's the first hearing on this. It may well be too wide at this point. I want to acknowledge that to the members of the committee. It may cast the net a bit wider than we wish. And so we're still working on that, but that's why I wanted to thank Chairman Fleming for rolling that language into his bill and for allowing us to, put that before the committee, and we'll continue to work with that.
Continue. Thank you.
On Zoom, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go to lines 153 and 154, where we talk about the students being eligible for 150% of the tuition equalization grant if they are in a field of study that's considered high demand by the Office of Workforce Development. Since that list changes annually, is it possible that a student might get 150% 1 year, and then if that career is now not so much in high demand and it falls off of that list, the next year they're going to only get the 100%? So is it possible that there might be fluctuations in their financial aid?
My answer to that is possible. I think that would be handled in rule and reg, and you would know going in if that was a possibility for you to lose or not. So that you would go in eyes wide open. You're in a high demand field. If that should come off, you would lose it, or it may be in rule and reg. If you start and that's a high demand field, then you continue throughout. But that's a great question, and President Riley, please, correct me if I'm wrong. That I believe is how we do other awards at this point. If you're in the program, you get to what do they call it? Teach throughout or teach out of it or so forth.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the question. That certainly would be something that we would consider in rules and regulations to ensure some awareness of our students and certainty on what they'd be eligible for.
Because the idea would be if you're in a high demand field and it goes away, it's because we have people in the pipeline and you don't want to cut them off. Did you have anything further, Dr. Clark? That's a great question.
No, nothing further. Thank
and
you.
Again, this is our first look at this. We'll see this again. There's work that we need to do on Zoom. Representative Clays.
Thank you so much. I see where we can really impact the workforce in helping create more opportunities for financing with young people who are in the high demand careers. My greatest concern is that we would be allowing colleges that are not accredited in the program before we know for sure that they are really teaching the curriculum and putting out the students that we need in the workforce. And so I have a strong concern that we should not endeavor, and especially leaving it open. If you're not accredited in 5 years, and to extend that, I would say that you need to go back to the drawing board as a college, and maybe that program that you have needs more than just additional time, but it needs maybe overhaul or changes to get it right. But that's a strong concern that you can be in existence for 5 years unaccredited, still take advantage of this program and not produce. You may not produce the students and the training that we need in the pipeline.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Representative Graves. I hear you loud and clear. Learn a lot from hearing that as well. And let me say again that is a section that I acknowledged previously. I think is a bit too wide a funnel. The thing that was being contemplated is you would be coming from another accrediting agency, and that's not yet in the language. But your point is well taken. You could be. The idea here is we've chosen one SACS is one of the accrediting agencies that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. What we are trying to allow, and that's a policy discussion and for us to have, but the reason for that was to allow someone that was approved by another accrediting agency to get their SACS accreditation. It was not at all intended to be someone that was completely unaccredited, and that language is what I acknowledged earlier needs to be tightened a bit. And I thank you for again, being laser focused and bringing that up as well. So we hear you loud and clear, and we'll be working on that.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Jackson.
No, I just answered the question. I was going to ask, are we taking action on this today?
No.
But then you said this was the first time. Thank you. That was all I had to ask.
Do we have any further questions from the committee? Again, the idea is for us to look at this, and we are. I know there are people here. I have a Star Bruner. Did you come to speak to this, or you just want to speak to us for a second? Okay, but not on this particular item. Okay, no, absolutely. So if there's no, I don't have any speakers on this. This was to kind of shine it out for everybody to see. I suspect there'll be a couple of changes between now and we have it next time. So if we'll circulate that, I'll ask the chair of the subcommittee, Chairman Fleming, to help us do that, and we'll take testimony on the bill when we have it back shortly. So if there's nothing further on this, I thank you. A lot of work. Your committee did a lot of work this summer. I really appreciate you putting the thought into this. HB 1224 we'll carry that forward and continue to work on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate
it. Thank you, President Riley. We have a speaker that would like to speak with us for a second, and I'm going to allow it. Did I get that right, Ms. Bruner? Please, you join us at the podium.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Star Bruner. I'm with the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I have the incredible honor of being the Inclusive Post-Secondary Education and Employment Director. So many of you all have heard about IPSE. IPSE is just college for students with intellectual disabilities. They spend 50% of their time or more, up to 100% at some campuses, in the same settings as their peers who may or may not have an intellectual disability. So same classes, same games, clubs. We have a lot of students at UGA in Greek life right now, which shows you how bought in our campuses are for inclusive post-secondary education. We have 9 public institutions in the state. We are adding our 10th IPSE campus in the fall. That will be at Berry College. It'll be our first private school in the system, and we have about 140 students across the state with intellectual disabilities getting a college education right now. I did want to give you guys just a thank you for the work that you did last year on what ended up being SB 246. I think it started out HB 185. It was the very last bill passed of session last year. It was a late night and a nail biter. So thank you for getting that to the finish line. I have heard what a huge impact it's had on families. I get calls and emails just about every day telling people telling me their stories. Many of you know that we're advocating for an increase of the allocation behind the IPSI grants. It doesn't go through this committee. It goes through the Appropriations Higher Ed Committee. We're just trying to get a higher percentage of what IPSI students pay to go to school paid for. These things called IPSI program fees. And I have a one-pager somewhere I can give it to you. These fees can be about $3,400 to $10,000 a year. So they're pretty expensive and they're not covered by the current allocation. If we add about 1.45 million to Georgia Student Finance's budget line on IPSI grants to make a total of about 2.4 million, we'll be able to cover the entire tuition for all of our students next year. That'll be 176 students. So you can see that we've gained 30 students statewide, and that is due to the IPSI grants. And I just want to say thank you again. And I would like to leave you with a note that I received from Dr. Gregory Blaylock at Columbus State Goals Program, which is their IPSI. I ran into the single parent of one of our first program graduates. This parent comes from a very low socioeconomic situation. She introduced me to a friend and went on about how the program opened up a whole new world for her daughter, who has been successfully working in her job because of her education at Columbus State. No doubt every program has the stories, but it just reminded me about how important this work is to individuals with intellectual disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and I was able to visit with some of the participants. I think they the Georgia
Destination Dogs.
Destination Dogs. Yes, I apologize. And I Representative Gaines has worked, well with that. That was his bill last year, and it turned into a Senate bill. But whatever Representative Gaines was, whatever gets it done, gets it done. So we really appreciate the work they done. And they're an inspirational group. It was great to sit down with them. So I thank you for coming, and thank you for visiting with us today. And we'll encourage the members to look up Chairman Knight. I'm sure everybody is asking for everybody has a budget request this time of year, and then but I think what she's asking us to do is weigh in on their behalf. I think this is a good investment. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see no business before the committee. I want to remind everybody we do have a meeting next Wednesday. Keep your eyes open. We'll probably meet a day before next Wednesday. We're getting close to days on bills that need to cross over for the 28th day that we have that. So keep your eyes open. There may be 2 meetings next week, but as of right now, we will plan for sure to meet at 1:00 on Wednesday. As with respect to House Bill 1224, Representative Fleming's bill, we'll look on, we'll work with him. But if you have any specific things, I encourage you to get with him. I think that could be an important measure and help us streamline the process. So we'll do that. And at that time, we'll look at the bills we had last year of people that are looking to add into the program, and we'll do that at that same time. If there's no further anything further before the committee, we'll stand adjourned without objection. I see no objection. We'll be adjourned.